I believe we actually have a Pac-12 game kicking off right now. Right now at past 11 o'clock Eastern time. I thought this game started at 10 or 10:30, but Washington and Oregon State, man, that means that even when we get off here, and no, I'm not staying on here for 3.5 hours, that we will have college football on when we get off tonight that I'll be able to watch if I really want to, which I think I will. Actually, I've been missing these late night Pac-12 games. Been missing them. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And the more we focus on the Pac-12 late at night, the less we will focus on Jim Harbaugh and Michigan's complete debacle. If you have any other ways to phrase Michigan's demise in college football, then throw them out there. Keep them clean. I want to see them in the live chat. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. It's pathetic. It is pathetic. That was my number one game tonight in prime time, was going to be Michigan-Wisconsin. I was doing some records and some instant analysis. So what I've got going here all day is just that DVR rolling. So I'm not watching a whole lot of this in real time. I'm catching up to it. And I didn't want to even catch up with the Michigan-Wisconsin game. By the time I got to 28-0, why watch anything else? Why watch any more of Michigan's futility? To be kind, being kind, their futility, it's pathetic. I have been saying on here that Jim Harbaugh is not going to get fired this year. He will not get fired this year. I would be pretty surprised. Nothing in sports shocks me anymore. That word, throw that word out the window. I'm not shocked by anything, but surprised. Should he be fired? So Michigan goes down tonight. I couldn't even go to the Florida-Arkansas game, so that's another game that I DVR'd and saw basically nothing except Florida scored 1 million points in that game. And Florida State was completely, I forgot to do something. I wanted to bring on some contributors tonight. Forgot to do that. So I'm going to get that link out there. So you guys dive into the live chat. You guys keep commenting. I think I'm about 100 comments behind, but I'm going to get to them. I will give you my analysis. I've been taking notes all day on tons of games. And, of course, over the next couple days, we will be here, and we will be providing recaps and getting you set for next week. All right. Good to see everyone out there. Super Chat's available. I'll get the what just happened there? That's not what I wanted. There we go. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. I do need to send this link out because I really screwed up, because I wanted to get some of our contributors on here tonight for reasons that deal with the channel, that we want to be able to do some things that I won't explain right now. So this is less than professional of me, but it is what it is. All right. That's who else told me that they may come on tonight? I forget. Shoot, who else played tonight? Arkansas, Florida, and Ole Miss in South Carolina. And I think that's it. I know I'm forgetting people. I am definitely forgetting people, and nobody's going to want to watch this replay because they're sitting there just watching me do this. But We will keep it at that. Oh, I think we've got one coming in right now. So Florida State went down tonight in Raleigh, blown out in that one. I don't even know what the final score was. I caught some of it, but that's why we got the big game James Coleman on the line to help us break it down. James, how we doing tonight?
Doing good. We scored 24 points, man.
24?
Yeah, man. I feel like almost like a big kid.
You're gonna
went
celebrate
to
on
real
that
school.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the first time that Florida State and this patented Mike Norvell offense has scored over 3 offensive touchdowns against the FBS school. So that's it's the first time for everything. So that's good.
James, where are you joining us from? We can't tell. Oh, you're in the car.
Yeah, I'm in the car. I'm driving home from watching the game, so I'm about to pull into my driveway here in a second. But
very good, very good. So, I got to tell you that I saw some of the game. Not much. I was going to rely on you, of course, to jump in here and let us know what happened. So, we'll start with the offense. Give us the offensive breakdown. I know you're excited about the 24 points on the board, but it was 9 in real time.
Right.
Some of that was garbage.
Yeah. Yes. Part of that was being facetious.
I realize that.
But there was so really toward the beginning of the game, it just kept it very easy. A lot of things that I've talked about on your show and that I've made mention of that people really view as making light, that as if I just don't like the kid, I want them all to be successful. It's Chuba Purdy has a funky throwing motion, as well as with the bad offensive line, it makes it very difficult for them to be able to even call certain plays. So you saw them really be able to take away the run, even though FSU did try to establish it. They did try to do different things, like they ran Wildcat with Corbin and Webb, even bringing in I forgot the other running back's name. It's very fat. It'll come to me, but
yeah.
We haven't even seen, like, Toa Foley wasn't in there, so it's a kid we haven't seen. But they tried to run the Wildcat with Corbin. And that kind of looked very gimmicky. Purdy, I guess, Tate and Purdy, to be honest with you, really look roughly the same, except for Tate has a tendency to throw an interception a little bit more, and his arm, believe it or not, is probably just as raggedy as Purdy's is. But the first half really showed the lack of faith in the arm, where you saw all the passes were under 10 yards with the release points. And there were some drops, and I know a lot of people want to say that, but there were a lot of high balls on a screen, which is terrifying. I know a lot of fans have never had to catch a screen before, but you don't want a screen when you're running full speed in one direction to go high when there's a defender coming full speed at you, because there's a lot of things you got to pay attention to. So that was really the offense. Then you saw I think Darius Washington go down early, so now you have a young offensive line hit with even more bad things, and that's just basically your Florida State's offense. It's a lot of stalling out. Oh, and the analytics played again. A lot of going forward on fourth down, putting your defense in some bad situations. One of which, the defense, it was 7-0. The defense had literally just stopped. Had a big fourth and one stuff on North Carolina State, and Florida State went 4 and out, and kind of put them right back in the same position, and then they ended up scoring a touchdown, which is very disheartening when you think about it. But all in all, they didn't quit. I mean, I guess I could do all the moral victory stuff. Defense had some times when they show flashes, but considering they don't have Marvin Wilson, considering Hamza Nazarene really came in, didn't show much, but like, what do you expect? The guy who's been hurt all year and is just now coming back, hasn't played football in over a year. No spring, no workouts, really, no nothing. But Cooper did pretty decent at times. They all show flashes, but there's still there's still some things that leave a little bit to be desired. Just still a little bit to be desired. But I can't sit here and, as hard as I've been on them on your show and on others, I cannot sit and say that there wasn't any improvement. Because no matter what, the garbage time, they've quit before. They've got a lot of guys that are out. They do have about near 3/4 of the team is freshmen and sophomores. So this could be one of those things that could be a step in the right direction. But it's hard to really, like you said, it's hard to. I could talk about the 20, I believe it was 24 points or something like that. Maybe it was 23, whatever it was. But the reality is, a lot of the only 9 came in real time.
So, James, going back to the quarterbacks and evaluating quarterbacks. So this is what I don't understand is that if it's obvious that a quarterback, and I will say this about Jordan Travis, and I could select other quarterbacks across the country where just watching them throw the ball, their lack of being able to put velocity on it, throw certain routes, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand if there's a misevaluation on a certain player at quarterback when they come into a program because they can't grasp the playbook, they can't read a defense, they can't do those sorts of things. But in terms of raw talent, throwing ability, that's where I don't understand a misevaluation. And when you see Jordan Travis, I won't even get into the other 2 quarterbacks because I saw them play a little bit, but I didn't see enough to really get much, except for none of them have outstanding throwing arms. But I did see the other 2 kids play tonight. I shouldn't call them kids, I guess. The young men play. Rodemaker and Purdy play tonight. I didn't see. But Jordan Travis obviously has like a hitch in his throw, and he just pushes it. Like, how is that not seen when they're evaluated?
Well, I mean, that a lot of that has to do with why Jordan Travis probably wasn't recruited to Florida State in the first place. With Jimbo Fisher, he was at Louisville first. Taggart brought him in as a guy who was a transfer when he didn't bring any quarterbacks in. He was more so supposed to be a depth guy as he tried to bring in his guys. So the guy who really has the most natural quarterback motion, the problem is he's a mental midget and he's already in the transfer portal, and that's James Blackman. I believe a confident James Blackman beats NC State again because of some of the throws that he can make. And I think Jordan Travis's ability really more so is how really dynamic he is with his legs. He is explosive. He makes you defend him honestly. You can't just drop back. Now, what I will say is Purdy did show how he's a little bit better of an athlete this week. I will give him that. Purdy did I believe he did a pretty decent job there, especially toward the end of the game when they dropped back. Nothing was there. He really found the space and beat him with his leg.
Yep.
But they all have this funky throwing motion, and that's part of the reason why a lot of people think that quarterbacks are recruited based upon their high school stats, and that's a portion of it. What happens is there's not a college coach in the nation at this point that hasn't seen all their quarterbacks throw live. So you have to go to the school and see some things that you like. So I go back to this, and a lot of people always say, James, you're just mad that they didn't recruit Jeff Sims. And it's not about Jeff Sims and his high school stats. If you know anything about his situation coming out of high school, he doesn't really have a great offensive mind as a coach. Now, what he does have, though, is a fluid throwing motion that you'll find most successful quarterbacks have. Now, the key is getting him to throw it to your team and not the other team. What happens when you have that kind of hitchy shot put motion, on air, you may be able to make every throw. But what happens is when you drop back and there's live bullets coming at you, if that motion isn't fluid, you really can't make those throws. And it becomes a lot harder. And especially when you're throwing the out routes, the ones where you see guys have to have that zip on it, it gets a lot of loft, and that's how you get those interceptions. So, and when you're scrambling, which is ironic, because none of our guys do it that well because none of them have a powerful arm. When you're on the run and you're trying to throw it, you already lose accuracy But when you don't have a good arm, it really just makes it even worse. But I wish I saw a game offensively where it just looked like we put all the pieces together. It looked like we had a competent game plan. It really just looks like we're running an assortment or a collection of plays and hoping that, and really flinging spaghetti at a wall and hoping something sticks. And I saw somebody put, when they went for it on fourth down, they're like, well, are you trying to win the game or are you trying to play for a close loss? And no, I'm trying to put these kids in a situation where they can play competent football for the first time in 3 to 4 years. And going for it on 4th and 1 on your own 31-yard line, there's no analytics, or I mean, I to be honest with you, I don't really give a damn about analytics. Analytics never lined up and breathed and played on the field. It's just not a really good position to put your defense in, especially if your defense isn't world beaters. Like you've got to protect them at a certain. You got, like, if you're the OC, especially if you're the head coach and you're the OC, you got to protect all your children. Your defensive guys are your children as well. You got to put them in good positions to be successful.
And that's one of the reasons I don't have an issue with running up a score on either side, as long as you've got backups in, because those kids want to play. They don't get to play most of the time. And so if a team's up 50-10 and they bring their backups in and they throw the ball around, well, that backup quarterback or that third-string quarterback, he needs work. The backup offensive linemen need work against real competition. So I got no issue with that. Back to the quarterback situation. One other question about quarterback selection is, when you run down the attributes of a Jordan Travis and say it's more running than throwing, and that's obvious. And if we were sitting here in 1995 or even 15 years ago, I could understand that to a certain extent. But is that really the skill set that you want when you're trying to achieve the goals that a Florida State should be trying to achieve?
No, it's not. And I think that's why he wasn't. Like, people ask because we get so not fooled, because I'm trying to use words that don't sound as negative. I don't really know if I'm accomplishing that goal, but like, he won and it was great, but it's not what you think. Like, you won a game where I believe he was 8 for 19 passing, but he did a lot of with his legs. Like, he was a running back that threw the ball. And I think Jordan Travis needs to be on the field. I just think this is where having a better quarterback competition, having a coach that, yes, you want to find your perfect quarterback, right? But offensive gurus can take whatever their philosophy and their formula is and mold it to what they have. If you have to wait for the personnel to be perfect for you, you're probably going to get fired. I mean, that's just the truth. So, like, you got to, like, again, and that's what makes guys like Dan Mullen so admirable, because he's taking a Felipe Franks, who is different from a Kyle Trask, who are different from the quarterbacks who he really likes, your Dak Prescott's, your Tim Tebow's. Like, he's got that kid in Anthony Richardson probably who would develop, but he's winning, and he's got a guy who literally never started a game in high school in the Heisman competition. So that's, if I'm Norvell, and I'll give Norvell the benefit that Trask is year 2 in the system. So without having the spring, there's some things that he already knew that they could mold with. But Mike Norvell, really, this is what you have. You've got Chubba Purdy, Jordan Travis, hopefully, unless he gets the portal, Tate Rodemaker, and hopefully Luke Altwell, which I know guys like, my guy Logan, and those guys really believe that, he's going to stick. But at a certain point, he's a competitor. And that don't look good. Like, I mean, I know I would want to go somewhere and have a resurgence, but like, I got to see who else coming in there to resurge with me. Ain't no lineman coming in there to resurge with me, and I need some more wide receivers as well. So, but it's I guess he's got to find his pieces. But if I were him, If it were me and I would consider the offensive guru, I would tailor my offense to what I got. Because the quote Urban Meyer, once you sign that contract, them your kids.
And James, believe me, I say all that being the guy that sits here just about every night defending quarterbacks across the country, because I think too many of us watch Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson play on Sunday. And then we also see Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence and think there's like 100 of those out there. And there's not. So there's a lot of very capable quarterbacks out there that are really good, but they make mistakes every game, and that's okay because all the other players make mistakes too. So I'm certainly not looking for the perfect quarterback, and think that generally as fans, the standard for quarterback play is just elevated to be. And if you don't have the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields guy, then you're ripping on your quarterback typically. A lot of these fan bases, and I think that's just way too high of a bar to expect these guys to play to.
Well, at the basics, you have to understand rhythm and release. So you got your 3-step, you got your 5-step. Typically, because a lot of these guys are in the gun, they're really just going 3 and 5. Nobody's doing like a 7-step out of the I formation anymore like that. Even with the pistol, they're far enough back to where they don't need to do that. But when you're doing a 3-step drop, at the end of that drop, in theory, the ball is supposed to get out of your hands. That's a quick game. And if it doesn't, if you step up, boom, it should be boom. The minute you climb, it's thrown, and you're on your third read. Same thing with the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you don't know where to go with the ball at that point, then you're climbing, and the ball should be being chucked deep. See, if you really get into those rhythms and you're throwing the ball on time, it should be very difficult for the defensive line to get to you. So it protects your offensive line. Now, the flip side of that is if your offensive line is better, it helps you go through all of your progressions as well. So it's a combination between at least your quarterback. I got made a joke about Rodemaker, whatever his name is. He made the right read. His arm just two-hopped it. So at least I'm like the progress is he threw it in the general vicinity of the guy who was open. He just didn't have the arm strength to throw it to the guy that was open, which is very weird in general. Like, I guess to one of your real point, you haven't said it, but like to what I say, which is kind of similar point, with all the quarterbacks that are available in the state of Florida, Georgia, whatever you want to call in the Southeast, there's at least one starting quarterback at every school. And there's probably at least 2,000 schools in those schools that are, and let's say 10% is what's considered elite. So what is that? That's like 200. That's at least 200. That's enough for every Division I school to have a quarterback that can throw the ball competently. Like, there should be no reason that you have a quarterback that doesn't have the physical attributes of what you need. Now, the mental and the character traits that you're looking for are different, but at least to be able to drop back, throw the ball with a spiral in a forward motion, there should be no reason there's not a quarterback on every Division I roster like that. It probably should be 3 or 4.
All right, folks, we'll get to Big Game. James Coleman on the line, joins us from his car. James, I appreciate you calling in. I got that link out there, and you shot it right back, so I appreciate you jumping on board, breaking down Florida State's latest loss to NC State on the road. James joins us most of the time on, let's see, what do we do now? Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Eastern for Florida State Seminoles Live. James, we'll let you go unless you got anything else you want to throw on top of all this.
Nah, nothing really. I mean, I would say it can't get any worse, but it can.
Yeah, that's been stated a few times by all of us, and it keeps going that way. So I'm sure we'll have another lively discussion coming up here on Wednesday night. Hope you can stop in. Folks, James is available for a live chat with you, live stream, just like we're doing right here. Send $5. We're doing a raffle. Send $5. I'll put up Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. You can reach me just about anywhere there. Or just send me, if you want more information on it, send me an email at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. If you got any questions, James is going to come on the line. I'll come on the line just to set it up operationally. I'll shut up and kick back, and you guys can have a great conversation on Florida State, the NFL, whatever you want to talk about with James. So let's do that. James, appreciate you stopping by, man. Have a good
Mark.
night.
Yep.
Yeah, man, James Coleman on the line. So again, James has made himself available for a live stream with you, the winner of our raffle. So if you want to send $5 directly to me at Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App, we can do that. Or if you want more information, I get that. So just send me a line at MarkRogersTV@gmail. And I want everybody to know that's on this live stream and beyond, because we'll get a couple thousand views after it posts. You can always reach me at MarkRogersTV@gmail. Always can reach me, MarkRogersTV@gmail, with any kind of suggestion, idea, request, anything. I apologize for the opening here. Had to restart the computer. That made me late. Had a few things I was fumbling around with in addition to that. And then again, I had forgotten that for the first time this Saturday night, I wanted to get some links out to some of our contributors, because that's going to help us build content for the other channels. But we still are going to do the same format each and every Saturday night, prime time, and late night here with the call-in show. So somebody had called. So please call back 860-325-3687. There it is. Someday we will do this right. Set, producer, graphics person, somebody to handle the phone line, the whole deal. Someday. So hopefully you all have that. Let me do this. Let me put the number down below on the crawl. There it is. It'll be there. And so we can get back to your comments. Want to remind everyone, Super Chat's available. Please like the video as well. Comment. Let's dive into Harbaugh, because I think that's what most of you people are talking about. So let's run down the scores too. We've got last game of the night here. Washington, Oregon State, 7-7, 6 minutes left in the first quarter. Jordan, South Carolina disappointed me so much. I took South Carolina in the points. They were up 42-38 with about 10 minutes left in the game. They got outscored 21-0. They converted a fourth down with about 2 minutes left to play. Converted a fourth down inside the 10-yard line through 4 straight incompletions into the end zone. Didn't cover. That's why I've always said this, even though I make my predictions available for everyone. And I don't know what they were today. They weren't great. I know that, but I've not counted them up. I will say that I truly believe that we should only predict games straight up, because that's all that matters. The spread shouldn't matter. And then the next comment that I hear back from people is they say, well, that's easy, picking the game straight up. Well, first of all, it's not. Secondly, then you just raise the bar for how good a percentage you should pick straight up. But it's more relevant to pick the game straight up than it is against the spread, if you follow me. It shouldn't matter how much these teams win by. That shouldn't matter. It should only matter who won the game. All right. In building this platform out, I really need to buy 2 new laptops, because this one's ancient and this one's basically ancient as well. But we will have to build. How's Kentucky doing? Awesome, John. I believe they won tonight. I think they beat Vandy 38-35. So, John, thank you so much for checking on Kentucky. If you're talking to me, maybe you're talking to somebody else. All right. Lane Kiffin's clipboard still in the air. I guess he chucked it up on one of the touchdowns. I did see that touchdown play the 91-yard pass from Matt Corral to Elijah Moore, blown coverage. I'm sure there was about 52 blown coverages by South Carolina as Ole Miss amassed like 1,000,000 yards and 59 points. But yeah, chucked it up in the air, did his typical Lane Kiffin throwing the arms up. When the ball's not even in the air yet, he just sees the guy break open in the blown coverage and he knows it's going to be a touchdown. The thing that annoys me about that is that if I was a defensive player on Lane Kiffin's team, see, I think Lane Kiffin is building a reputation and has in the past that he's going to continue to attract and draw offensive talent to his program. And what does that mean? That means he's never going to win. He's not going to attract defensive players. Defensive players are going to feel like second-class citizens in the Ole Miss program. This is a bit of conjecture here, but I just see that aura about him, that mindset, that approach going strictly to the offense. And because it was after that long touchdown where he threw the clipboard, I think that was the play he threw the clipboard that everybody's talking about, that the defense right after that made two excellent plays. There was a sack and there was a tackle for loss. And I was thinking this would be the perfect time for Lane Kiffin to go crazy, to show so much love to his defense after making a couple plays, because you can't score touchdowns on defense very often. So you need to show love to the defense. Those are equivalents to touchdowns, tackles for loss, sacks, and show some love to the defense. But I'm guessing that Lane Kiffin doesn't care so much about defense, and therefore he will probably never win a championship anywhere. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello, it's me again. LeBron.
Hey, how's it going?
I just need to ask one thing. What is going on with Michigan?
Wow.
I mean, I'm a Buckeye fan watching that game, and I just feel so bad for them. Their defense looks terrible. I think they allowed like over 300 plus rushing yards to them. They can't even stop a fullback from running like 50 yards.
Yeah.
I'm like speechless in this game.
I know I'm rubbing my head because I got a headache. Plus, I was watching Michigan play for about a half tonight. And you know as well as I know, sure, Michigan's not been an elite team. They've not reached expectations, but they have been good under Harbaugh up until this season. They've been good. They've been top 15 good. And now it just seems like all the life, all the will, all the fight, all the fire is out of him. And therefore, if it's out of him, it's going to be out of the team and out of the program. And it just seems like they are, I don't want to call them a bunch of quitters because they're out there trying, or I'm guessing most of them are. It appears as though they're still trying, but they are a deflated, demoralized team. I think every other team in the Big Ten probably, if you put them on the field with Michigan, would at least show, even Illinois, even Rutgers would show more fight, more desire, more energy. They're just a defeated team.
Hey, I think they either missed on their Pickwick, I don't know what they say. What do you call it, payday? They missed it, and I guess they missed the international trips to go in the summer to Marvel.
I'm having trouble hearing some of that, but
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just
the alignment, trying to help stop the run game, and they missed the usual international trips in the summer. Didn't happen due to the COVID and the limited practice. I don't know what's going on. They lost to, well, they beat Minnesota. They lost to Michigan State. They can't stop the pass attack. Now they can't stop Wisconsin's run game when their pass attack was straight against Illinois. I don't know. Do you think Don Brown? I don't know about Don Brown. I mean, we torched them with drag rounds all day, scoring 50-plus points in the BC game. But no, now Wisconsin, any team can just lift this team up. And Indiana, I don't know. The Indiana Michigan State game, it was a good first half of the game. I don't know what happened to Indiana in the second half. They missed like a field goal, I think, or two, I don't know. And then they failed to convert like 4 downs in the red zone. Is that like a concern for Indiana? Is that concerning heading to Ohio State? Those middle hitters?
Well, the game was out of hand at that point. But I do think that they're still trying to execute, and so it's alarming. Yeah, I think there's some concern there because it wasn't like they were trying to shut down and not score. Indiana's a flawed football team. They're not a great football team. They're a good football team. I don't think they're in Ohio State's league. I'm going to have to see it to believe it. But all that game did was, to me, underline Michigan's issues, because I see Michigan State leave the big house after they scored 27 points and beat Michigan, and then go and get blasted by 6 touchdowns to Iowa, and then get shut out by Indiana. So it's crazy.
Well, hopefully here for the Big Ten, like the West is competitive. So far, I think Western will be leading right now, coming into next week. And the Big Ten West.
Yes, Northwestern's 4-0, Wisconsin's 2-0. All right, man. Got a couple calls coming in. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. Have a good one. Had a couple calls drop off. If you'd like to call back, I will pick those up. 860-325-3687. We got Washington with a field goal. Let's not win this game by too much, boys. I think I've got Oregon State in 14.5, if I remember correctly. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. The man that gives college football its voice. This is Dave Greenshield. How you doing, buddy?
I like how you turn a phrase there, David.
Thank you. I have a way of doing that from time to time. Well, I just have to say, Mark, I think Jim Harbaugh is coaching on borrowed time. He better brush up that resume. What do you think?
Well, he's not necessarily going to have to hurry back to get to any kind of, employment status. I don't think he's necessarily in my situation, and he's got to work anytime soon. I think he's in pretty good shape there. He may want to brush up that NFL resume, because as I was texting back to a number of friends that were dogging him, he's got, I don't know if I was having this conversation with you or with somebody else, where I pointed out he had one of the 4 best winning percentages in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he did that over a short period of time. He had Trent Baalke that was, picking the players, who was his general manager.
Sure.
And he did a really good job there. So it's a little bit of a different structure. I think what helps in the NFL is if you get with the right organization, owner, general manager, and that type of situation. I got to say that as a Cleveland Browns fan, I've bared witness to that for the last 20 years of not having the right people picking the players. So, yeah, I think he benefited from that. I must say, when he went back to college, when he went there, as I said to you before, Mark, I really thought he could have recruited a quarterback by now. And maybe Joe Milton had some possibilities. I've been open-minded to him maybe being a really good quarterback, but I just always thought that he could have scored at that position. He could have built a coaching staff, and he could have found the guy that recruited Andrew Luck could have found a really good college quarterback by now. But he hasn't been able to. Does that still blow you away, Mark? Have you not been able to?
Well, I thought that this guy would be possibly the first one. Sure. Yeah, he's relied on transfers, and he's had a couple fringe NFL players at the beginning of his stay at Michigan. Unfortunately for him, he probably had his worst quarterback in Michigan actually quarterback his best team when Wilton Spate was there in 2016. And then, of course, Brandon Peters was a 4-star recruit. He turned out to be a marginal MAC level Illinois quarterback, and now we've got Shea Patterson and Joe Milton. So I don't know if he can't recruit quarterbacks or he can't develop quarterbacks, but one or the other, it's just not happening.
Well, that goes back to the Steve Gates point about they can't develop their players up there. And I think that's what we were talking about the other night. Because his recruiting classes are pretty good. I mean, if you're getting top 10 recruiting classes and not getting a top 10 team out of it, then that says something about your player development, just bottom line. And like I told you the other night, his inability to put together a really good coaching staff is totally on him. To not find, let's say, and when they didn't let go of Don Brown, here was the thing. When they lost to Ohio State 62-39 in 2018, and they realized that our problem is we better go find an offensive coach, doesn't that say something?
I think we lost you there, David. Still with us?
What's
okay,
that?
There you are.
What?
You were gone there for a few seconds.
No, Mark, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. What I was saying is when they lost to Ohio State in 2018, 62-39, and they figured, you know what, let's go get an offensive coach because that's our problem. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they needed to fix a defense that was giving up 62 points instead of looking at an offensive coach. That's what I'm saying. You get my point?
I get your point if we're going to be hyper-focused on one game, and I know that's the game, but still, Don Brown was fielding top 5 defenses in the country.
Okay. And you know what, though, Mark? In every big game, when the stats bear it out, they keep on giving up 40, 50, 60 points. And
whoa. Not to anybody not named Ohio State.
Okay. How did they do tonight? How did they do against Alabama in the bowl game? How did they do against Florida in the bowl game that they lost after Ohio State in 2018? I guarantee you in those games they were giving up in the high 30s, low 40s.
Sure. Okay, so Alabama scored 35 points. One of the touchdowns was scored with like 8 seconds left in the game. So I'm not going to go nuts about that. So they were competitive in that game. It was a game into the fourth quarter. The Florida Bowl game, I don't know. They beat Florida less than a year before that, and they beat them prior to that. Now, in that particular game, they were missing a lot of players. A lot of players opted out of that game. I'm not defending Jim Harbaugh across the board. I'm just saying that he is not succeeding at what he has been hired to do, and that's win championships. There's no debating that. And now it's gotten to a point where I don't know how good they are. They're pretty awful. I think we've seen 4 games, and they played good against what has proven to be a really bad opponent. And now they've played 3 awful games against good to very marginal teams. So the one thing I'll say about the recruiting rankings, I don't think his teams have underachieved much from the recruiting rankings.
Well, he's been consistently top 10 recruiting rankings, but he's not been consistently top 10 final rankings, Mark.
No, he's not in the top 10, but he's right in that area. He's in the 15 range.
Okay. I mean, I would think that he has. I don't know. I would think that he could at least win a couple of those bowl games that he should have lost. If he's losing to some other Big Ten teams other than Ohio State that he shouldn't be losing to. Obviously, this year is proof positive of that. So I don't think he's getting much bang for his buck out of his recruiting classes from where they're at right now. Please tell me where I'm going along with that assessment.
I'm just saying that Jim Harbaugh was hired at Michigan to win championships. He is not doing that. He's failing. But if we're looking at up through 2019, take away this season is either an aberration or this season is the beginning and the end, and they've gone from underachieving to awful and he'll be gone, or he'll be going 5-7 in the Big Ten for the next 3 years, because what they're doing right now is obviously not even to the standard that he's had for 5 years there.
Right.
But I will say that if you look at the recruiting rankings, I don't have them in front of me, but from the top of my head, yeah, they've generally been in the 8 to 12 to 13 range in the recruiting rankings. And they've been a, roughly 5 spots behind that in terms of where they've been ranked, where I believe they are. And I don't always believe in the rankings, as you well know. So my estimation of how good a team is, especially if they're playing in the second best conference in America, then I think their final ranking is actually skewed. But, they played a team in a bowl game last year that was better than a team that played in the college football playoff. That was a pretty bad matchup for them. They were playing like the 4th best team in the country. And again, I'm not defending. I'm just saying that they have been, by the measure of any program outside of the ones we could obviously name, about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, something in that range, the elites plus Notre Dame and a couple more, he's pretty much outcoached and outperformed everybody else in the country.
One question for you, Mark. One question for you. And I agree about talent advantage. And you know what? I've started to follow recruiting rankings a little bit more since Urban Meyer became the coach at Ohio State. I follow recruiting rankings a little bit more during the Tressel years. But I have to ask you this question.
Yep. And
I do think that recruiting rankings and final rankings usually do match up.
Yep.
So what's the biggest rivalry in the SEC?
In the SEC?
Yes.
I would say either Alabama LSU or Alabama Auburn.
Okay. I would say it's the Iron Bowl, Alabama and Auburn.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay.
And maybe you know where I'm going with this.
Maybe.
I would ask you this question.
Yep.
I would ask you this question. Does Nick Saban have a talent advantage over Gus Malzahn?
Yes.
And what's Gus Malzahn's record against Nick Saban?
3-4.
Okay, that's not great, but still.
Oh, it's good. It's better than anybody else.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Gus Malzahn, this might surprise some people, though, but Gus Malzahn's records at Auburn, aside from going to a national championship game, which is obviously very significant in his first year, but since Jim Harbaugh's been at Michigan, Gus Malzahn doesn't have as good a record as Jim Harbaugh does.
Right. But what I'm saying to you is he's been able to beat his rival with a talent disadvantage that's not as big a gap as what's the gap between Auburn's recruiting and Alabama's recruiting? Is it wider than Ohio State's advantage in recruiting versus Michigan?
I think it's pretty close, because Alabama, I just started some research for a video I'm going to do, and I jotted down Alabama's. I wanted to look at the talent of all the teams, every team in college football, from the time that the first college football playoff season. So I had to go back to 2011 because those rosters were stacked going back to 2011. And Alabama had all number 1 rankings except for like a 5 and a 2. So they've had by far the best all the way through the decade. And Auburn, too. I'll pull it right now. Keep talking, David.
Okay. What I'm saying is, okay, you just said that Michigan averaged between 8 and 12 in the recruiting rankings, Mark. Okay?
Yeah, off the top of my head.
Okay. So we'll say Jim Harbaugh's been the coach at Michigan for 5 years, well, going on 6 years now.
Yes.
2015 through 2020.
Yep.
So if he's been the coach at Michigan for 6 years, his average recruiting rankings, if you averaged it out over 6 years, would probably rank somewhere around 9 or 10 is what we're going to say.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn has been at Auburn from 2013 to 2020.
Yep.
What do you think do you think his recruiting rankings average out to be higher or lower?
I've got him right in front of me because I've done all the research that I need to do on the SEC. I can't compare the Big Ten, though. Okay, so Auburn since 2013, 10, 6, 8, 9, 9, 12, 11, 7. They've averaged an 8.8.
Okay.
Alabama, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 1, 2.
Right. Right. And I can tell you where Ohio State ranks, Mark. We average about top 3 in recruiting.
Sure.
Okay? Because I think Georgia might be the only program other than Alabama that recruits higher than us. So if we're at 3, where's Michigan at in average recruiting rankings? Maybe 10, 11?
Sure. The gap's about the same, almost to a T.
But you understand the comparison I'm trying to make?
I understand the point you're making, but the thing that I hear from a lot of people, maybe not necessarily you, is that Jim Harbaugh is losing like all the time. Like he's losing to the elites, but he's also losing games he shouldn't lose. Well, then he's got to be winning. If he's winning 72 or 3% of his games, he's got to be beating somebody. What he's been doing is he's been losing to all the teams that are better than him, and he's been beating, up until this season, all the teams that are worse than his team. That's what he's been consistently doing this entire time.
Okay. Well, I mean, the point that I'm making is that I think that the recruiting rankings sometimes bear it out and sometimes don't bear it out. Because even with a recruiting disadvantage, you can sometimes stumble into a win or two.
Well, sure, of course.
Yeah. That's the bottom line comparison that I'm making. And again, I think that you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I've said many times here, it is baffling that Michigan has lost to Ohio State the way they have. But let's also understand that they haven't lost to Ohio State by 4 scores for 8 years in a row. They've lost to Ohio State by 4 scores the last 2 years. The 2017 game was very competitive. The 2016 game, they outplayed Ohio State, and you can argue that one back and forth. Bottom line, they lost the game, but the 2 teams on the field were very comparable, if not Michigan better.
Sure.
The 2015 team, they played a great team. They played a great roster in Ohio State. Of course, they got their doors blown off. So he's been routed 3 times, and he's lost 2 close games and won an excruciatingly close game. So this 60 to 30 type loss has been 2 years. Like people talk about it like it's been going on for 10 years. He's lost to Ohio State like this twice.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. I mean, 2 of the games he's had have been competitive, and 3 of them have been blowouts. Yeah, you're right. Basically, bottom line. I tell you what, the 17 game, if JT Barrett doesn't get hurt, we might not have won that game, to be honest with you. We were kind of fortunate Haskins. We were fortunate Haskins came in and saved the day in that game, to be fair on that.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
All right, David, I'm going to take some more of these calls. I appreciate it. Pardon me? I need to take this call. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I missed it. My apologies. Somebody call back. I need to jump on those calls quicker and I'm going to be ruthless and cut people off. I'm sorry, because I cannot keep those on hold. That's on my priority list. It's about number 87, but we will get to it at some point, one of these years. Thanks for your patience. I gave quite the soliloquy yesterday on that. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Logan. What's going on, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. What's going on?
What's going on, man? I'm happy. Is this the wrong show, by the way, to talk about the Miami Hurricanes? Because that's your title.
Well, you can talk about whatever you want. We just talk about college football. You can talk about whoever you want to talk about.
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. I'm so proud of this win. I'm proud. Awesome. We're 7-1. Who would have thought?
Okay. I did not expect you to be that happy with this win.
Of course you didn't. You're the biggest Miami hater of all time. Of course, everybody else.
I am the one. What's funny, I saw a couple of comments today on another channel where my name was brought up, and they said I'm a shill for Miami, and I hate Florida and Florida State, is what these people were saying. So I get it from all directions.
Yeah, I mean, even then to this point, being 7-1, I still understand and agree with what you were saying, because honestly, the way the season is going, I feel like it's 2017 all over again. You know, we all know how 2017 went. I think we were 10-0 and then completely dropped the ball and were a mess. So I can completely understand where you're coming from. I mean, even when you look at 2017, 18, 19, and even this season, you know, there's no reason to really put your money on Miami if you got money like that. I definitely wouldn't, you know. I wouldn't have put it on today's game, and it shows why, you know.
Yeah, so just based on our previous conversations, that's the only reason I said that I didn't expect you to be completely satisfied with today's win.
Yeah, so honestly speaking, you know, anybody in here who's a true Miami fan, you know, we got a lot of delusional fans. This win shows that last week we had to depend on the offense to close out the game. This week we had to depend on the defense to close out the game, which I think they did, you know. And that's what probably separates us a little bit from how 2017 went, is at least now we have two sides of the ball that we can kind of depend on, at least at this point. You know, it hasn't really shown that we can't yet. You know, both sides of the ball have shown up and closed out games. So that's great. But it just shows, like I've been saying on your show a lot, it's just Miami, we're not there. We're a long ways behind. If we went out right now, they're saying Orange Bowl of Florida. And I'll tell you what, I'd rather not. I mean, being a Miami Hurricane fan, it's Florida, I got it, but I'd rather not. We're not even there with Florida, in my opinion.
I got you, Hurricane.
Especially on offense with Kyle Trask, it's insane. And I don't want our defense to have those problems.
Hey, Hurricane, I appreciate the call. I got a guest coming on here.
No problem, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, Florida with a big win against Arkansas, 63-35. Kyle Trask with another huge night. We got Jackie Franchuli on the line from All Gators on SI. Jackie, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. This was a very good game for Florida, considering, you know, Kyle Pitts wasn't playing, and a great performance by Kyle Trask.
Absolutely. So I got to admit, I didn't see one play of this game, so that's why we've got you on here. But I did see the score go by, and I expect to take it in at some point this week as I got it on my DVR. But wow, 63-35 against a team that has been playing rather well. It's a much improved Arkansas team that had given all sorts of teams fits and beaten some pretty good competition in the SEC Western Division. So this Florida team, after some early season struggles, not on the offensive side, of course, has certainly found its groove the last few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when you look at that 63-35 score, you think, was this a basketball game? Was it a Big 12 game? No, this was an SEC game. And this was a Florida offense going up against an Arkansas defense that prior to this game was the second-ranked passing defense in the SEC. They were averaging just 222 passing yards. And today, Florida had 385 passing yards against that Arkansas defense. It was a great game by Kyle Trask, who had 6 touchdown passes. I think Kyle Trask in this game said, remember me? I'm a Heisman contender in this game. I know he slowly was starting to get national attention after that Georgia win. But I think this game kind of, you know, I was watching the ESPN broadcast for a bit, and you can see now they're talking about him along with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. So a lot of people are taking notice of him. And you have to see why. Cal Trask is now the first player in Florida history to throw 6 touchdown passes in multiple games in the season. He did that against Georgia as well. And then he also had 28 touchdown passes this year, tied for most by any FBS player through 6 games. And he extended the SEC record as well for having 4 or more touchdown passes in a game. He's having a season to remember. And, you know, when you look at Florida's schedule, it looks really good for Florida. They face Vandy next week. And then they have Kentucky, Tennessee, and LSU. So it's a very good schedule for Florida. Kyle Trask continues to show that, you know, he is a guy leading this offense. He's improved. But when you look at the game today, especially, what we learned was Florida has multiple weapons. They're not just Kyle Pitts. They are also Xavier Henderson. They're also Keon Zipper. They're also Trevon Grimes. They're also Jacob Copeland. They're also Damian Pierce. All those offensive weapons are there for Kyle Trask to throw to them. So this was a really good kind of coming out party for the rest of the Florida offense, because usually when we're here talking, we're talking about the Kyles, Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts. And obviously Kyle Trask warrants a lot of this praise. But what we need to focus on, too, is the fact that he has the good weapons around him. So if Kyle Pitts is out, which he looks like he's going to be out for Vandy as well, he had surgery on his nose from that collision from Georgia that caused that concussion. So without Pitts, they still have enough weapons to cause problems. So this is a team that can certainly go really far into the postseason.
Got Jackie Franciulli on the line from allgators.com on the SI platform. Jackie joins us on a regular basis, and appreciate her calling in tonight to give us the lowdown on the Florida big win over Arkansas, 63-35. So before we get to the defense, Jackie, one other point on the offense, especially since I've had disgruntled Michigan fans calling me tonight and disgruntled Georgia fans based on their quarterback situation and lack of development in the quarterback room. And I told a little white lie. I did catch about 8 to 10 plays of the game as I was cutting back from other games during commercial breaks. And even during the broadcast, it was being talked about that Kyle Trask never started a game in high school, on, and the whole story that we all know and have heard a million times. But it does underline Dan Mullen's ability to develop quarterbacks. If you look at the long litany of quarterbacks that he's developed at his stops at Mississippi State and prior to, of course, as an offensive coordinator at Florida. And it is something to really mark his legacy that's obviously continuing to be built.
No, for sure. And actually, there's a meme going around on Twitter. Someone got a video of Dan Mullen kind of talking seriously to Kyle Trask, looking like he was, telling Trask what he did wrong after his 5th touchdown pass. And you see that, and that right there explains why Mullen has done well with quarterbacks. He's dissecting a guy that who went 23 for 29 for 356 yards passing and 6 touchdowns. That is what he was doing right there. And, even Kyle Trask was like, that's the type of coach that I want to play for. I want a coach that wants perfection, and he's correcting me on little things, and that's why I get better. But Dan Mullen is doing great. He's obviously got a resume to show which quarterbacks he's developed. But you have to take a minute and go back and congratulate, 1, Randy Shannon, and 2, Doug Nussmeier for finding Kyle Trask. When Nussmeier and McElwain were still at Florida, I remember speaking with Nussmeier, and he was saying that Kyle Trask was going to be the future of this University of Florida team. Nussmeier knew what Trask was capable of. I don't know if this Trask would have reached these heights under that former staff. We don't know, obviously, but you got to give credit at least for them to finding this talent who was not starting on a high school team, and was not. In any recruiting services. I think he was ranked in the late 200s, early 300s coming out of his recruiting class. No one gave him a chance. Although I will say, I was on the Trask train a lot earlier than many people. If you were a subscriber to Scout.com's FightingGators.com, I was on the Trask train for a while. I thought he should have won the starting job Mullen's first season. But he also had a couple of injuries, which kind of derailed his career a little bit there early on.
I guess we'll have to get our fact checkers and dive into the archive to fact check you, Jackie.
No, it's okay. I've
But,
got
but I
I've
believe you, of
I've
course.
I've got screenshots. I've got screenshots. That's what. But no, I think Dan Mullen has done a good job of developing talent in many places he's gone, and so has the staff members. And I think if you look at that tight end room, seeing Kamori Gamble and Keon Zipper and what they were able to do today as well. Brewster has obviously done a very big impact in that room. And when you look at a guy in the wide receiver room, like Kadarius Toney, developing and how he's changed and becoming a complete wide receiver. And you look at all these other wide receivers also, like Trevon Grimes, and you see like Justin Shorter. Justin Shorter has been a huge addition to Florida. So it's not obviously Kyle Trask is going to be the story because his numbers are amazing. But just overall, what this staff has done to semi-annual players, to making them step forward in their career, and that's why this Florida team is going to be tough to stop offensively.
Yeah, Justin Shorter probably pretty happy right about now. He's not at Penn State.
And Penn State fans are upset that he's not there.
Exactly. They could use some weapons. Which brings me to when you mentioned Tony in particular, and when you mentioned Damian Pierce a few minutes ago, because thinking back to the Georgia game, there were some interesting routes and concepts that they gave Damian Pierce to get him out of the backfield, get him in pass patterns. And I'm sure this is another thing that Dan Mullen, as the mad scientist, loves, is when he's got so many weapons that can do different things that, that he can line them up in different formations, put them in different roles, and just play around and continue to evolve the offense.
No, that's right. And actually, Mark, I didn't even mention this. They had 280 rushing yards against Arkansas. That is the first time they had over 100 yards rushing this whole season. So it's when you have an ability to stretch the field that Kyle Trask has and all your weapons, in the air, Florida is finally able to have a ground game that they've struggled the last few years. And it also helps that the offensive line has gotten better. There was one or two times where we saw some slip ups in the offensive line, but they're doing better now. And actually, they did a great job in this game tonight. And they were able to get some push out and were able to give Trask time to throw, and were able to allow the running backs to go. And that also goes with having better run blockers. Again, it goes with Brewster and the tight ends doing well in their blocks. So everything's kind of moving a step forward. And like you said, they have been able to use some of these running backs in the air too. Malik Davis is one against Georgia that had 100 yards receiving in that game. So this is something that Florida staff likes to tinker around and move players around to fit what they believe is their strengths. And we even saw Kadarius Toney throw a pass today. It wasn't a completion, but that's the sort of thing where Florida will play around with. Michael Pirine last year threw a touchdown. Attempted to throw a touchdown. So it's something that the staff isn't afraid to do.
We have to hit on the defense. So you see 63-35. Obviously, the conclusion is, they got ripped up by Ole Miss. They got ripped up, for the better part of this season. They righted some wrongs against Missouri. The Georgia effort was pretty good, but here we are. They're giving up big points. But I always like to categorize and put it into context. When are you giving up the points? And this game was 35-14 at halftime. So not a lot of meaningful points out of that 35. So how did the defense look to you?
The defense looked a lot better. Yeah, 14 of these points did come in the fourth quarter. And they did look a lot better. Zach Carter had a scoop and score. He did a great job. He actually got to sack Felipe Franks, and he joked in the post-game presser, "I've always wanted to do that." Obviously, he couldn't do that against Felipe Franks during practice because he was their quarterback. And there's no issue between them. It's just that Felipe Franks is a very competitive guy. And when we even watched them at practice, he would kind of go up to the defenders and kind of rile them up. So before the game, the defenders were telling us, "I just want to hit him one time, man." And Zach Carter got his chance. But they did good well. There's a lot of jokes of saying third and Grantham, and they've been struggling on third down a lot, keeping, offenses on the field. But today they did pretty well. They went 3 for 9. So they are showing improvement. Now, there are times when we saw them, blow coverage, that Kurt Elam was beat on that first touchdown for Arkansas. So there are times where you go like, okay, they need improvement here and here, but they are making steady improvement. If Arkansas, Felipe Franks has the ability to make big plays with his arms, and you saw that. So there are some big plays that they did let slip by. But at the end of the day, they were able to control the line of scrimmage, and they were able to force Franks to scramble, and they were able to get him off the field because of that, because the defensive line were able to do well in the pass rush, and they were able to kind of just put pressure on the quarterback and not allow Felipe Franks time to throw the ball, to make those explosive plays all the time. So yes, we've seen a lot of progress. And again, I think I've mentioned that with you, Mark, before, that Kyrie Campbell has been a huge difference maker for Florida. You can tell he just makes everyone around him play better because they're all playing in their correct position. Like Zach Carter is playing in his right spot. You can see how much of a difference that makes him. He's able to rush in there. He gets quarterback hurries. He's able to finally sack Felipe Franks. So I think Florida is on the right trajectory. And it's considering that a lot of, they've had some missing pieces today. Linebacker James Houston was not available today. Jeremiah Moon was also not available today. These are guys that have heavy rotations, heavy reps. And then towards the end of the game, we're able to see young linebackers like Derek Wingo, who's a freshman, and we're able to see Tyron Hopper. So when you say they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, we were also seeing young guys being rotated in that defense. We're able to see a lot of these freshmen come in, or a lot of these redshirt freshmen. So these guys were getting meaningful reps against an SEC competition. And I think just overall, when you look at this season and you look at these numbers, like even with Kyle Trask earlier, you're seeing these guys' numbers now against SEC competition. There's no cupcake games now. This is not, William and Mary, or another team like Georgia State, so Georgia Southern. This is the SEC competition, and you can see how much they've improved from the first game to now.
And that's a great point that you make for stat geeks and nerds like myself and others that are listening, is that I can remember Drew Lock a few years ago, and certainly he's gone on. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL, so not to discredit his work, but there was one particular season he threw like 44 touchdown passes. Well, they played 2 FCS teams in which he bombed away for like 6 or 7 touchdown passes. When you had to look at an SEC schedule for an SEC quarterback and see the 4 non-conference games, who did they play, and then kind of do a breakdown, a splits of sort, where you don't do that now. It's 10 SEC games, there are 10 quality opponents, and so the stats are truly legit for everyone across the board. Got Jackie Franchuli on the line. She breaks down the Gators for us on a regular basis. You can join Jackie, and I encourage you to head on over to allgators.com on SI and check out her work right there on Florida football. You can definitely catch all the insight, and it's obvious every time Jackie joins us. Jackie, we appreciate you stopping by. We do our little post-game show where we get all sorts of callers and try to get as much covered as possible. So thank you so much for stopping by and giving us a slice of the Gators.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thanks, Jackie. All right. That was Jackie Franchuli. We talk Florida football with Jackie on a regular basis. Also, of course, David Waters from Gators Breakdown. And we will dive back into the live chat. Somebody had called during the first part of that conversation, so we're back to the calls. Yeah, I got to tell you, Kirby Dumb, that Kyle Trask, my goodness. I don't know, though. Trask, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, I'm going to knock him down a peg or two because of the limited number of games, and he's only going to play, it is going to be 9. So it's going to be comparable to the 11 or 12 with the conference championship game, although Florida's missed a game that they're going to make up, right? We'll just have to wait until the end of the season, see how many games these guys play. It's not like a regular season in which we could say, well, they're all going to play 12 games. We can judge them accordingly. It is interesting to note that the Heisman Trophy presentation is on, what was the date? It was just announced. It's actually after the college football playoff weekend. Now, I don't know when the voters are going to have their ballots in by, but usually the final regular season week is the last week of November, with championship weekend the first weekend of December, and then the Heisman Trophy is typically the next Saturday, where now we have the conference championship game slated for December 19th. Then the Heisman Trophy is going to be announced. That would be 2 weeks later. All right. Our guy Luke Walker has commented many times over the last several weeks, but it was no truer than today. How in the world did North Carolina lose to Florida State? As we continue to see Florida State lose to everybody in the ACC. I was watching, I probably saw 20 to 25 plays of the Florida State game. And I thought, you know, anytime we've talked the ACC, and I've run down at kind of the tier system of the ACC, I've noted for much of this season, well, the worst team in the ACC must be either Duke or Syracuse, or how about Florida State? Is Florida State not the worst team in the ACC? They keep losing to these middling teams in the ACC, the mid-tier, and I'm being kind sometimes. They keep losing to them by 30 points. Louisville lost again today to Virginia by 17, and they annihilated Florida State a few weeks ago. Pitt beat them by 24. I don't know what the final score was tonight against NC State, but it doesn't matter. It was 35-9 at one point. Whew. Yes, Sam Howell is he and the offense probably unlike who is the other good team in America? We could say Ole Miss. We could throw Ole Miss into this category, but they're not good. Where the offense, where one side of the ball is just carrying the other side of the ball. A good team. North Carolina is not a great team. They're not quite as good as I thought they were going to be because I expected better defense. But their offense, they have a top 5 offense in the country. Our man Luke Walker is always on here touting North Carolina, and they are that good on offense. They are ridiculous. I was afraid that I was going to screw up on the point spread because I took Wake in the 14, whatever the number was, 13.5. And I thought I was in great shape the whole game. Wake's up by, 21 points? And then North Carolina hits them with a zillion points in a row, 35 straight, before it got close at the end, 59-53. So Mac Brown, I have not dissected the recruiting rankings to tell whether all these great recruiting efforts have gone to the defensive side of the ball as well. But obviously those kids are rather young, but they're going to have to get coached up here soon. Right now, I think North Carolina finishes probably 8-3. I think they've got 2 losses right now, 5-2, I believe. 5-2, maybe 6-2. If they get to 8-3, then they get to a decent bowl game. Andrew is telling us that Florida's unstoppable. Oh, so is that actually next week's game, Duke and Florida State? That's pretty bad. 137 on the line. Thank you so much for joining us. Earlier tonight, we had James Coleman from Fifth Quarter College Football joins us to talk Florida State football. And if you would like to have a conversation with James, to talk football with Big Game James Coleman, and if you're not aware, Florida State fullback from 2002 through 2005, and this just does not have to be about Florida State. He covers college football. He does professional work for a number of Jacksonville outlets, television stations, radio stations, covering the Jacksonville Jaguars, so he's deep into the NFL as well. But if you would like to have a conversation with James on a live stream like this, I'll stay out of the way. You don't have to worry about me butting in, throwing my 2 cents in to tell you that's a stupid question or this is the way it really is. I'll not do that. Then we're running a raffle. So you throw $5 at us and we'll get you in the raffle and you can talk to Big Game James Coleman. Just football, whatever. All right, good stuff. Love these post-game shows. I apologize. I just hate that we don't have a completely professional deal going on here. That just irritates me. And you guys are watching YouTube and stuff all the time, so you probably don't care. I worked in television for 30 years at ESPN and at local affiliates, so I'm just not used to doing it this way. All right. Yeah, I got to think that Florida State fans at this point are just thinking this guy, he's making Willie Taggart look good. Now it's only 8 games, and I will continue to get on our Florida State show and say that it's only 8 games. He shouldn't be fired. But very rarely in the history of college football have we seen a coach who's ultimately successful run the program into the ground first and then lift it out. That usually doesn't happen. Usually the success comes right away. Maybe there's one season where it's noticeable on the field, but the record doesn't really follow. Like Nick Saban's first year at Alabama, they went 7-6. But they were you could just tell, okay, he's working it through. He's implementing his system. He's working the process. And then bam, in 08, SEC championship game, Sugar Bowl. Urban Meyer, Ohio State, and on down the line before that, those guys. Not that Mike Norvell needs to be Nick Saban or Urban Meyer. We're talking about 2 of the 10 best coaches of all time. Nick Saban's arguably the greatest. I would put him in that spot. I would put Urban Meyer not far behind. Any all-time coaches rankings that I've seen, Urban Meyer, he's mysteriously low. And I never understood that. I don't know. I think there's a sentiment out there against him for other things that have happened at Florida and Ohio State. But just talking about him as a football coach, he's arguably the best, certainly in the top 10. To not have him ranked in the top 10. We were kicking this around on our Ohio State live show several months ago when I looked up a few all-time greatest coaching lists. I need to do that. I'll shoot a video on that during the off season. The 25 greatest coaches of all time. Anyway, and I should do the current coaches. It's been a while since I've done that. Urban Meyer on one of these lists was like 43rd. What? 43rd? He's got the best winning percentage of all time. And when I say all time, I mean he's 3rd, but the 2 other guys are Frank Leahy and Newt Rockne. They coached in the, prior to World War II. All right. Yes, Luke, I know that you would like that. Will Muschamp coaching for you would be great. A lot of Kyle Trask. This must have been during our Florida conversation. John, yes, Michigan is a worse disaster than Penn State. This is why. Don't look at the record. Look at Penn State. Penn State was fine up until through last season. Let's pump the brakes. I saw some video posted or something about Penn State's some kind of a disaster. Relax. I don't think it's completely off the rails after James Franklin has finished in the top 10 3 out of the last 4 years and in the top 15 every year. Yeah. They've run into some bad luck. They lost their best defensive player, their best offensive player, and his backup. And they lost a completely fluke. So look at how good Indiana is, or how good they are perceived to be. Think about it this way. Look how good Indiana is perceived to be. They're top 10 in the nation. They're 4-0. They're going to play Ohio State this week. Okay. Some people considering them the second best team in the Big Ten. Maybe. I think it's probably Wisconsin. But Penn State outplayed Indiana by any possible measurement other than the final score. Indiana won fair and square, but Penn State outplayed Indiana just 3 weeks ago. So, okay, now this could be a season that sends Penn State in the wrong direction. That's possible, but I'm not going to base my evaluation on James Franklin and the Penn State football program on 4 weeks, especially since after that, I think it was the Ohio State loss that just broke their back. So they lose to Indiana. They're not expecting that. They're expecting the loss to be against Ohio State. And I'm not just talking about them, all of us. So they lose to Indiana. which makes the Ohio State game a must-win. They were clearly not in Ohio State's class, didn't get blown out, but were not in the game. So they're suddenly 0-2 and their season's over. It's over. They're not going to get Ohio State to lose 3 games, which is what would have to happen. So Penn State, after they lost to Ohio State, their season's over. So since then, I don't know that we can really put a lot of stock in how well Penn State plays the rest of the season. I'm not going to be that concerned. If they go 3-6 this year, I'm going to have to see the decline continue next year before I'm going to believe it. Yes, it's going to be quite the doubleheader of sorts in the Big Ten, Andrew. 4 undefeated teams, they all face off next week. Indiana, Ohio State, and Wisconsin Northwestern. Love it, love it, love it. Benzie Boy 101.1, Wisconsin and Ohio State, the only legit teams in the Big Ten. I really don't know what that means, but define legit. Seems like I've seen these comments before. Bruce, when did we stop focusing on Michigan's futility and start talking about a very solid Badgers team? I posted a video on Wisconsin football this week. We talked nothing but Wisconsin for 20 minutes. So I do. Matthew, the Big Ten is bad, Mark. They have 2 good teams with a good but overrated Indiana team. Okay. You might be right, but there's nothing to base that on. There's absolutely nothing to base that on. This is why. What's the record of all the teams in the Big Ten versus, okay, give me another conference. Name another conference that's better than the Big Ten. Okay, you're probably going to say, maybe you say the ACC. Well, what's the record of all the teams in the ACC? Within the ACC, it's the same record. Everybody has the same record this year. There are no non-conference games. We can make no evaluation of any of these teams against teams in other conferences. We can't do it. You can say they look bad, but just because we thought Michigan and Penn State were something and they turned out to be nothing against the rest of the Big Ten, well, the league still has the same record. So maybe Wisconsin's great. Maybe Northwestern's great. Purdue, whomever. Give me the great league. You could look at the SEC this season and say, is Auburn really that good? Is Texas A&M that good? Okay, maybe Texas A&M's pretty good. Alabama, I believe Alabama is the best team in the country. Based on what I've seen, not that can't be changed, but based on what I've seen, Alabama is the best team in the country. Florida's really good. Okay, there's a bunch of teams in there that we expected to be better going into this season, but LSU, Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn. Okay. Those teams aren't that good. Hello there, Cancel Enemy. Yes, we've got Pac-12 football at noon tomorrow, Eastern time. So they're going to be playing at 9 in the morning. Again, the Pac-12 is awful. They do not deserve a playoff berth. Again, you can look at that 2 different ways, and I'll explain in a second. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Yeah. Hey, it's Mark.
Hey, is this
What's up?
Mark Rogers TV?
Absolutely.
Hey, this is Curtis calling you from Cambodia,
Hey, Curtis, how are you?
watching you live.
Awesome.
How about you, fellow Buckeye fan myself?
Well, I appreciate you calling. What's going on?
Not much. Just love watching Michigan get curb stomped by Wisconsin.
They sure did that.
So my question to you is, who gets fired first, James Franklin or Jim Harbaugh?
Oh, it better be Harbaugh. Why would James Franklin get fired?
Well, he's going, what, 4 right now?
You're going to fire a coach because he goes 0-4? Who just finished in the top 15 the last 4 years, won a Big Ten championship, won the Cotton Bowl last year, finished 11-2, 3 out of the last 4 years?
I guess I'll give you that. But I think people at Blue Bloods are a bit less forgiving, than they are at your second-tier schools.
Well, yeah, I would consider both of those to be blue bloods. They're not elite programs, though, and haven't been for a long, long time.
That's true. That is very true.
But yeah,
So
I
if,
understand Penn
Michigan
State's a
gets-
huge,
If
huge
Michigan gets rid of
disappointment.
Harbaugh, who do they go after?
Who would I go after?
Yeah.
I believe that Matt Campbell at Iowa State's a really good coach. Boy, I've not given that much thought because I don't think Harbaugh is going to get fired unless he decides to step away himself. I think he might be getting that frustrated and that sick of it, possibly. I think he's lost a lot of fight and a lot of fire. Michigan. I got to think this one over. Boy, all I'm coming up with are bad coaches, not any good coaches.
I've heard Luke Fickell.
Yes.
I don't see Luke going up there and coaching in Ann Arbor.
I don't either.
He's a good Buckeye.
I don't see him doing that either. Although I could not fault him. It's a good career move, but I don't think he will.
No.
People have talked
I
about
can't see that
PJ
happening.
Fleck. I've heard that name. I've heard Pat Fitzgerald. We talked on our Ohio State show this week, and somebody brought up Pat Fitzgerald.
I don't see him leaving Northwestern. He's getting everything he wants there. They just got the new facilities and they're investing in the program. I don't see him. He didn't go to Notre Dame, 10 years ago. I don't see him ever leave.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to go 10-2, 11-1 at Northwestern to keep his job.
That's exactly it. But James Franklin, I would argue, does. Back to why I think James Franklin might be gone at the end of this year.
I would think that
I
would
don't
be
see a lot of Penn State fans happy with him.
Well, I understand, but he's lost 4. They've played 4 games. 4 games ago, they were the Cotton Bowl champion, and they just came off an 11-2 year. Like they're seriously.
I agree.
Like, if you want to keep those standards, then why wasn't Bill O'Brien fired? Why wasn't Joe Pa fired? Joe Paterno in the early 2000s had 3 losing seasons in 4 years.
Well, if I remember correctly, he was asked to leave, and he said no. And then they came back and lost, I don't know, was it 2005 where they lost only 1 game?
Yes.
They beat Ohio State.
Yep. Yeah, they went 11-1.
Then they had the Terrell Pryor fumble game.
Sure.
When Ohio State was well in control of that game. So Joe was asked to leave, and they gave him a couple of years to do it, and then miraculously he got it turned around. Bill O'Brien was dealing with a
Absolutely.
completely different answer.
Sure. I understand
There's
that.
no way you could fire him.
Yeah, I understand that when I brought up Bill O'Brien, but
I mean,
I understand Penn State fans being upset, but my goodness, they want to fire. And I'm not a James Franklin fan at all. I could care less, but my goodness, they're going to go, they're going to win 11 games most seasons, and then they start off 0-4 and they want to fire their coach.
I'm with you there. I'm with you, but I'm looking at their schedule, and they got the Hawkeyes coming in next week. That's, the way things look right now, that's an L, you know. I would say Iowa's a much better program than Nebraska and IU.
Yep, they are.
Then you got a wounded Wolverine team, and, you know, let's flip the coin on that game.
Yep.
So, and then you finish with Rutgers and Sparty. What, they're going to get 2 wins, 3 at the most this year? Well, depending upon who they play, they might get Minnesota in the Big Ten, you know, crossover games there at the end. They can win that because Minnesota's awful.
I think it's irrelevant what he does this year. I think it's at this point he's 0-4. Whether he goes 4-5 or 2-7, that's irrelevant. I think it's completely irrelevant. To fire a coach who has he was put in a good place by Bill O'Brien on many levels. And it took him 3 years to get going. He went 7-6 the first 2 years. It took him a third year to get going and get to the Rose Bowl and win the Big Ten.
Right.
But he's built the second best program in the conference. Now, it may not be right this second, but since 2016, 16, 17, 18, 19, it's been the second best team in the conference. And then he's going to get fired.
Yeah. Well, I hope they keep it. You know, I love his decision making when the game's on the line against the Buckeyes. So I hope they do keep it. Just like I hope Michigan keeps Harbaugh. You know.
Well, they both could end up hiring other guys and do worse, especially Penn State.
Oh yes, for sure. There's no doubt about that. I think that both of them have the problem where they had players sit out this year, key players sit out, you know. But does that go more against the culture of the program? Because, you know, I look at Ohio State, Wisconsin, those guys didn't have anybody sit out. Alabama didn't have anybody sit out. I don't think that Florida had anybody sit out. I'm pretty sure Georgia had that quarterback sit out, but I think he did that because he wasn't going to get a play. So that tells you more about the culture than it does about the you know, I don't know. But, hey, I'm not 20 years old playing Division I football either. So.
Well, there have certainly been crazier things happen than James Franklin getting fired after going 2-7. So I wouldn't be shocked, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's irrelevant what is now. It's not good if they finish 2-7. They'd rather finish 5-4 or whatever. But they're not competing for anything at this point anyway. It's just a record, and it's such a screwed up season. I think, you know, just think about this. We're sitting here on whatever the date is, and 3 weeks ago, Penn State was the 8th ranked team in the country. They were just, you know, hours before hitting the field against Indiana. They lost a game where they rolled up 500 yards of total offense against about 130. No, I'm sorry, about 210. And they blew the game. Indiana earned the win. I'm not debating it. It wasn't like there was a bad call or something like that. But they outplayed Indiana. They lost in a fluky way. And that, you know, if we're considering Indiana to be as good as a lot of people are now, they're the 10th ranked team in the country. They're 4-0. They've beaten some decent teams. They've beaten Michigan now by 21 points or whatever it was, 17 points. That Penn State took them to the wire, should have won the game, outplayed them. I think they basically blew that game, and then they knew they had a must-win against Ohio State, and they're clearly not in Ohio State's class. They didn't get blown out, but they weren't in the game seriously. And then I think they mailed it in after that. I think the season's over. I think they just mailed it in.
I agree.
And that's not good, but
I
that's
mean,
not.
I think that's the same thing that's going on up there in Ann Arbor. I think those guys mailed it in. You know,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
They don't have any fight or whatever.
But I guess
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
contrasting the
Wait till the
two.
5 State stuff.
I'm contrasting the two in a way because Penn State loses the fluke game against Indiana. Then they're facing maybe the best team in the country. They play okay. They're in the game, but you know, you watch the game. I think you know where I sit on this.
Yeah.
And so then the season's over, and they didn't expect that.
Yeah.
They expected to be at worst 1-1, and then they're fighting to, you know, finish 8-1 after that. Where Michigan gets off to this great start, and it was a bit smoke and mirrors because we didn't know how bad Minnesota was at the time. But have a great start, so they go into the Michigan State game 1-0, having this great start, new quarterback, and they lose to a Michigan State team. Then, other than that game against Michigan, has looked like complete crap. And Michigan's been awful ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, I just wanted to give you a call, letting you know that there are people halfway around the world watching you right now.
Well, that's awesome.
I came here. I actually live in China. I came here for Chinese New Year and have been stuck here ever since. So.
Oh my goodness.
Hope to get back to my wife and kids someday here.
Oh my
but,
goodness.
That's not looking good.
Well, I'm
About
sorry.
Another 6 months or so. But,
I am sorry to hear that,
but
sir.
anyways, no, I'll tell you what. I love it here in Cambodia. I couldn't be stuck in a better place. It's being stuck somewhere. It's a pretty good place to be stuck.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. Well, I appreciate you calling
All right,
tonight.
well,
Thank you so much.
no, I appreciate you answering, buddy. And,
That's awesome.
keep up the good work, and I watch you on with Steve Dace on Michigan Podcast. I think you guys do a great job there on the 10-minute war, and keep up the good work, man.
Very cool. It's good to hear from people like you. Appreciate that.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you.
Got a call from Cambodia, Buckeyes fan in Cambodia. So I hope he's able to make it out of there at some point soon. Seems like he's doing okay regardless. That's good to know. All right. Snake Spence asking if Miami's going to win out. I think they should. They do have to play North Carolina. Mickey B, thank you so much. Everybody smash that like button. Please do me a favor. Smash the like button. I got to tell you, I don't even know what that does. Technically, if we're going to go through the metrics of it, I don't know how YouTube evaluates it. I just know it's a good thing. I've read about it. I've seen videos on it. Just get people to hit the like button because YouTube likes that. YouTube, if you've got a video that's got 1,000 views and you've got 2 likes, they're going to evaluate that much worse than 1,000 views and 500 likes. So please hit the like button. And I know that from some of the feedback that you guys are watching on phones and it's difficult to hit the like button or something, just please do it. Eli, to me, again, Michigan's a much bigger disappointment. I get it. Penn State's got the worst record, but I think the situation in Michigan is so much worse on so many levels. Who are the 4 best teams right now? Alabama's number 1. Ohio State's number 2. After what I saw in South Bend last week, I don't believe it. I'm still going to say Clemson's 3, and Notre Dame's the 4th best team in the country, based on what I've seen so far. I did not think I would be making that statement in mid-November. I did not. I thought I'd be saying Georgia or maybe even Florida or maybe Texas, maybe Oregon. Okay, Mr. HD. I value everybody's opinion out there until you prove to be completely ignorant, which some people do, and that's fine. You don't have to be an expert on college football to watch the show and talk. So I'm not questioning this necessarily, or I'm not disputing or agreeing with it, but I just love to know what is that based on, because it can't be based on the results on the field, because the results on the field are exactly the same for every conference. So if this was a normal season and we had the Big Ten teams playing 3 non-conference games, and let's say they were going out and losing, let's say this was this season, 2020, and we didn't have a pandemic, everything happened the way it was supposed to with the schedule. Ohio State went out to Oregon and lost and looked bad. And Penn State went down to Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's not even really that good, and Penn State lost to them. And Michigan, I don't know who Michigan's been. Oh, they were going to go out to Washington. Michigan went out to Washington and lost. Wisconsin, who were they supposed to play? Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's really good, but let's say Wisconsin just got trampled. And on and on and on. You follow me? Then we could say, okay, yeah, the Big Ten is awful. We don't have any of those games. You get the point? They're beating each other. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it can't be confirmed. They can't be confirmed. The only mark against any conference right now is against the Big 12, because the Big 12 had 2 of its pretty high-level teams, Kansas State and Iowa State, go out, play Sun Belt teams, and lose. And also had one of its lesser teams, but still a team in the Big 12, Texas Tech, lose to something called Houston Baptist. No, I'm sorry. They won on a 2-point conversion, but were taken to the brink of a loss against Houston Baptist. The Big 12 is the only conference that has any marks against or for it, and they're against it. Now, the ACC played some just minuscule non-conference games against Charlotte and the Citadel, etc. Except, of course, Virginia Tech. So think about this, Miami fans. If you want to play the transitive property, Virginia Tech lost to Miami by 1 point. Game went down to the wire. Was leading most of the game. That Virginia Tech team lost to Liberty last week. Liberty. And you can do the song, the jingle. And yeah, I know Liberty's 8-0, but Liberty's not that good. Okay. Bus seat. The first thing I saw from Jim Harbaugh that looked good to me this year is pulling Milton and putting in Cade McNamara. Okay. I don't even know how to evaluate Joe Milton at this point, because I think he's on a sinking ship. It's like quarterbacks who get drafted by bad NFL franchises. It's like any quarterback who's been drafted by, it's trying to evaluate Sam Darnold right now with the New York Jets. Had he gone somewhere else with a capable coaching staff and front office and administration and a winning culture, maybe he'd be doing great. Hugh Freeze takes his rivals seriously. He would beat Ryan Day within 2 years. Okay. But Hugh Freeze at Michigan, and he would beat Ryan Day within 2 years. I highly doubt that, but it's all hypothetical. You can say whatever you want. Hugh Freeze beat Alabama twice. I think he could help Michigan beat Ohio State. He could, possibly. Michigan is not hiring Hugh Freeze and his reputation. They are not. I would be shocked. Rarely am I shocked, but that would shock me. He doesn't fit the Michigan profile. Reasonable Gump. Mark isn't helping himself on that one. A lot of people felt that Joe Paterno had outlived his usefulness by then anyway. I don't know what that's referring to. We're talking Michigan head coach. Busty doesn't want Pat Fitzgerald. Mineral Tim 79. Yeah. Gotcha. Stretching the neck. What are we supposed to do? Like this? That's stretching the neck. There we go. All right. I don't have any good successors for Jim Harbaugh off the top of my head. I know PJ Fleck was talked about during the offseason. Matt Campbell. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark, I've been making that money, so I missed part of the show. What I missed?
What'd you miss? People are complaining about Harbaugh. That's a lot of it.
Well, let's see. I would say like 2001, the last decent season I can remember Michigan having, and I done said it. I mean, people don't. This is just the honest truth. Kids, what has changed? Cleveland used to be richer than New York City. And so you had people going to Ohio State. Detroit was a major area. People don't live in those areas no more that made those two schools great. But, you know, I have done what they have done by getting people out of Ohio and, out of Florida and Texas. They don't really recruit the state of Ohio like that, like they used to, like hardcore. Because those type of players are not there anymore. It's that thing with Michigan. They have to make that change, but Michigan should have a better footprint than it does. And for some reason, they just can't get it done anymore. And I think Harbaugh should have changed who he was. I think he should have lined up and did the 7 offensive linemen like he did at Stanford and just run the ball down people's throats. I mean, I just don't think he should have changed what he was doing.
Well,
that's what I'm going here.
Yeah, but by doing that, would he have reached his ultimate goal, or what Michigan fans' ultimate goal is, and that's to win a national championship playing like that?
Yeah, but Michigan ain't won a national championship. I mean, if we look around, Nebraska's in the same boat. Penn State, I mean, I know they have some decent years, but they're pretty much headed that same thing. I mean, it's just a change in the levels. I mean, Nebraska, reason why a lot of people went to Nebraska because that's what you saw on TV most of the time back in the day, along with Notre Dame. So, I mean, you just got to change with the times, and unfortunately, Michigan might be a relic of the past that's not going to come back. I mean, I know you tell me they had 10-win seasons the last 10 years or something like that. So, I think they have a chance to come back. This is an odd year. I mean, maybe next year Harbaugh can get it back, but he can't develop a quarterback for some reason. And I think he has, 4-star quarterbacks that came in, McCaffrey and some other guys, but for some reason he can't get it together with the quarterback situation. You tell me they got speed, so I don't know what more he can do. I don't watch Michigan football enough to know. I know they shouldn't be losing to Wisconsin 42-11, and what was it, 49-11 or something like that. I mean, you shouldn't be losing to Wisconsin that way because by the recruiting basis, you have more talent than Wisconsin.
Sure. All right. So what do you want me to tell you, DeAndre? I'm not.
Nothing to tell. We're just talking.
I'm not totally sold on your take on Penn State, though. When you say Penn State's never going to win, or whatever you said about Penn State not winning, or they haven't been that good, or all those teams, or you said something about your basic point, if I understand this correct, is that Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Nebraska are kind of in the same boat. People are leaving those areas.
Well, no, but what I'm saying
But
is,
Ohio
if
State's
you look at
adjusted.
Ohio,
You're saying Ohio State's adjusted. Obviously, that's obvious. They're winning as much as anybody in the country. So they've adjusted. But Ohio State's the state of Ohio still produces about the 6th or 7th best high school football players in the country. It's not what it was, but it's still valuable.
and I'm not saying it's not, but what I'm saying is most of those players are going to Cincinnati and Kentucky. Under Urban Meyer, I know that his focus was more on Florida and Texas. Now, I know Day has made a little bit of adjustment, but think about the last two good left tackles to come out of Ohio State. Hyatt and Cameron Jackson both went to Clemson. I know they had more talent than that, but I'm just using that for example. That's one of the reasons why they say Kentucky is doing so good, because Urban Meyer left Ohio alone, and then Ohio, so Kentucky has started getting some of the players out of Ohio. And I understand where Penn State get a lot of their players from. It's from the DMV area, the Philadelphia area, but those areas are still not heavily populated with a lot of talent like they used to be. But that's not the DMV area. DMV area is loaded, but I'm just saying, just using that for example.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you that Penn State has been really good. Penn State's had one of the 8 or 10 best teams in the country for the last 4 years.
Okay, I can agree with that. Yeah, they're better than Michigan and Nebraska. I can agree with that. I'm just saying, I don't know. This COVID thing got everybody messed up. So I got to see a full year of everybody doing something proper. When Indiana football is like ranked number 10 in the nation, you got to be like, what the hell is going on now? COVID in 2020 just messing us all up.
They're not that good. They're not that good. I'll go on record as saying that right now. Indiana's going to show that they're not the 10th best team in the country.
But after they play Ohio State, which we both think they're going to lose to, who else is going to beat them? They're going to beat the other two big dogs. The Rutgers ain't going to beat them. They had to beat Rutgers, so who else is going to beat them? I don't know if they play Wisconsin or not, so who else is going to beat them? I thought Ohio State.
Well, that doesn't mean they're the 10th best team in the country.
Yeah. What your record is, who would say it is, though. So I agree with you. I agree with you, but when you look at their record, their record say 10-1, or how many games they're playing? 8-1.
9.
And
Yeah.
the shortened schedule.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm going to make a prediction right now. Let me look at Indiana's schedule. They've got Ohio State, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Purdue. I'm going to make a prediction that Indiana loses at least 2 games this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't know they were playing Wisconsin. I didn't know what their schedule was looking like. But yeah, I can agree with that.
And
putting them at 6-2 on the short schedule.
And if they play, they would finish. They're 4-0 right now. They'd go 6-2, and they'd have to play whomever the last weekend. Maybe somebody like Iowa or Northwestern.
What did you watch USC in Arizona?
I watched the last 5 or 6 minutes.
Why is USC struggling? Their defense is not that good. And also, I understand COVID too. But,
No, their offense.
Arizona.
They only had 20 points on the scoreboard with 3 minutes left in the game.
Right. Well, yeah, so the offense is on that bad?
It shouldn't be. I don't think their offensive line's that good.
Right. Well, I don't know with you, but or somebody else that said this when we was having one of our talks on your talk show. Who is really impressed by the offensive line? Maybe Georgia in a way.
Who's got a good offensive line?
I mean Notre Dame, but their offensive line is great. But it also took 5 years to put those 5 guys together, though, too. And we already saw that coming when we talked earlier in the year.
So I would say going into this season, the teams that are supposed to have really good offensive lines that typically do or were projected to this year would be Ohio State, Wisconsin, Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, Oregon. Although I saw a stat tonight, Oregon based on recruiting, but not based on experience. I saw a stat tonight that Oregon had the most experienced offensive line in the country last year. Their offensive line had like some ridiculous number of starts. And their offensive line this year only has 1 start prior to this season.
Wow.
Offensive line, who else? That's my short list right there. There's my list of 7 or 8 teams. I've seen Oklahoma State play. They've got a good offensive line.
Yeah. I can't wait to. There's so much. I was ready for the season to start. Now because of all the stuff that's going on, ready for the season to end. I kind of like, what is Arizona State? I mean, who played tomorrow? UCLA and Cal play tomorrow?
Yes.
I'm like, that's something that I really want to watch, but because of football, I'll be watching it. I mean, I don't know what the committee's going to do to make. I'm kind of in the boat. Like I used to be against suspending the playoffs, but I'm kind of in that boat now. Like, let's go ahead and suspend it, where we can have some decent football and have a real national championship. Because the way it's looking right now, because Oregon and USC, and I know they only played 2 games. There's a good chance that Clemson and Notre Dame will play 3 times this year. If Clemson beats Notre Dame in the ACC championship game, and that's going to be crazy. I can't tell you the last time there's been a team that played Rick Thompson in the season.
Yeah.
I've seen them play twice, Florida and Florida State, and I think Miami and Florida State did it 1 year too.
Well,
that's going to be crazy.
I got to say, DeAndre, people have been asking me and asked tonight who the 4 best teams in the country are. And I wouldn't have expected myself to say this a few weeks ago, but after I said the obvious 3, I said probably Notre Dame, number 4.
Oh, yeah.
Probably. Maybe Florida.
Oh, yeah, Florida is definitely good, but, I mean, they can't play defense against Alabama, unfortunately. We won't see. I mean, it's going to be crazy because what happened if Florida beat Alabama? Does that mean Florida, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State get in, and Clemson beat Notre Dame, or Notre Dame beat Clemson again? You got to put Notre Dame in there. So, I mean, then Clemson's on the outside, and you got Notre Dame, Florida, Alabama, and Ohio State. Those 4. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous. I know the Pac-10 ain't going to get much respect. Unfortunately, it's like, well, how can you rule them out? It's not their fault. They got a late start to the season. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
well, it's also.
I got a cousin in California. He's still running out there.
Well, they got 2 strikes against them. Number 1 is the limited number of games, and number 2 is the perception that they're no good. And really, that's not fair because. Yeah, they have been the worst conference, or arguably the worst conference the last 4 or 5 years, but that shouldn't have anything to do with this year. And like I'm trying to tell people in the live chat, there's no way to compare these conferences this year. Zero.
Right.
They don't play each other.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Now, we can guess. We can say. Now, since Michigan and Penn State are down, we could say, well, it looks like the Big Ten's down. But when all these conferences play each other, the record's the same. It's 500. Every conference record is 500. So somebody has to beat somebody. So while Michigan and Penn State might be down, who's to say that Northwestern and Purdue and Wisconsin and whomever else aren't up? Indiana. I hope we get in a bunch of bowl games because I want to see these teams play each other.
I don't know. I don't understand why they just don't put. They should have started when they started, but you're back in February. Make sure you get enough games in. I mean, at least we have equal say or equal because. And I should have brought this up last time we was on your talk show. Go look at the end of the year when Clemson plays Virginia Tech the last game, right? So 2 weeks after that is the ACC championship game. Notre Dame will have to play a game before the ACC championship game. That means Clemson will have 2 weeks to get ready for Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has to play a game. And we looked at what they only play in Wake Forest. Wake Forest has a really good offense. So, you tell somebody get 2 weeks up, and then they only have 3 games left against Florida State and Pitt and Virginia Tech, who all are not really that good this year. So, you're giving Clemson the advantage, which really isn't fair. I mean, life ain't fair, but I mean, it's going to be interesting at the end of the year if they do hook up to play in the ACC championship game. And Notre Dame will have to play that extra game before the Clemson game, ACC championship game, if that happens. So that's something to look at towards the end of the year. It don't take that much time to adjust to what happened, especially if something gets help. That's what I meant to ask Jason last time I spoke to him. Justin Foster, the defensive end, he's a senior this year, and we haven't seen him play yet. I was wondering what happened to him. And then I've been doing some research on how they say he's not playing right now. And they said they expect for him to be back this year, but he's not playing. They haven't said why or no speculation or why he's not playing. But when you have a good night, I'll give other people a chance to call in. I've been listening to the show while I'm out here making this money.
Thanks, DeAndre. I appreciate it so much, man. You have a good one.
You too.
Our man DeAndre always has interesting perspective on things, always has some good things to say. Love talking to true college football fans, and that's all of you. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if you weren't. So whether I agree with you or you agree with me, we do all love college football. Who cares about Michigan? We've got a South Carolina fan. Good to see a South Carolina fan. We've got a lot of Michigan in here. We got a lot of Ohio State. We got a lot of Miami. We got a lot of Florida State. We got a lot of Clemson. I'm trying to think who else gets in here. Michael Hogue, Purdue. Tough one today, Michael. I watched that game. That was my favorite game of the day. No kidding. That was my game. If I could only watch one game today, I would have said Purdue and Northwestern. Heck yeah. It's a decent game. It's a good game. Swampy McGee supplying us with plenty here. Uh-oh. I've got to block somebody. Okay. Sorry, I'm about 10 minutes late to that. I don't see it. I will be looking for it. Little side note there, Swampy McGee, since you're mentioning that Indiana won the Big Ten championship in 1967. Actually, my civics teacher in high school, shout out to Mr. Paulus, and I almost feel embarrassed that I said shout out because I have been sworn to have said that I will never give a shout out. But anyway, salute to Mr. Paulus there. My civics teacher, he was a member of the 1967 Indiana Rose Bowl team. All right, there we go. We got Jack on the line asking me about head coaches. Boy, we should get going on that, huh? I'm trying to think. Who in the world would be a good coach for them? You know what? As is the case most of the time when we have our next wave of excellent coaches, they're typically not guys that we think of because we think of the hot shot. We think of the guys that are succeeding somewhere else at maybe just a rung lower. Some of the guys that I've always felt were excellent coaches are going through some rough times right now. Like David Shaw has a ton of respect out there, but I don't necessarily know that he's a great football coach. He inherited what Harbaugh gave him. He did well with it. And then it started to slip about 4 or 5 years later. I always thought Gary Patterson did a great job at TCU. You know who's a great football coach that just retired or left the business but came back, and I'm not talking about Urban Meyer, is of course Chris Peterson, but he felt the stress and the pressure at Washington. So if he felt the stress and the pressure at Washington, and that's one of the reasons he stepped down, he's not going to Michigan. Yeah, who else? Any big college coaches that went to the NFL? Then Bill O'Brien, of course, just was dismissed at Houston. Bill O'Brien at Michigan. Of course, Michigan was looking for a coach right about the time that Les Miles won the national championship at LSU when Lloyd Carr stepped down and Rich Rod was hired. And then that turned out to be an issue that to some extent still prevails there at Michigan. They've never replaced Lloyd Carr, who had a nice run at Michigan, in addition to the national championship season. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is BuzzFeed. I'm commenting on your comments. My name is Gene. I'm in Oakland, but I'm under BuzzFeed in the comments.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, no. Well, I'm calling about Michigan, and I think that you're right that Jim Harbaugh just doesn't have the same heart that he had. His best year was 2016, and if things had gone a little bit differently in that Ohio State game, just little things, he would have won that game. Won the Big Ten championship and been in the Final Four, and that would have been a huge goal that I'm sure he would have wanted to reach. But I don't know if it was just him losing that game that took something from him, because 2 of his coaches left after that. One was Jed Fish, and the other one was DJ Durkin.
Yep.
And for some reason, that coaching staff had chemistry, and they were going somewhere. The team was getting better all the time, and there was like an optimism. And I don't think he's found coaches to replace those people. I don't know whatever reason it is, but he just hasn't gotten the same quality of coaches that they were. He had Jim McElwain, and their receivers had a great year when he was coaching their receivers, but then he left to go to Central Michigan. And I don't think he ever was going to stay. I think he was just 1 year there before he took a head coaching job. So I don't know if it's just Jim Harbaugh losing the desire or losing heart or losing whatever. I think he just hasn't found coaches that have the same chemistry when put together that he had at San Francisco with the 49ers or at Stanford or in San Diego. And the guys he has now just are not fitting together. And as a Michigan fan, I'm thinking after 6 years, I'm watching the defense, especially the defensive line, and I can't understand why he doesn't have some huge guys in the middle of the defensive line who don't get pushed around. Because especially on that 10-yard, it looked like a 10-yard run for a touchdown, it was a huge hole. That should not happen. And on that goal line stand, it looked like the whole defensive line got pushed backwards into the end zone, and that should not happen. And I'm wondering, how has it got to the point where after 6 years of recruiting that he doesn't have a defensive line and even backups that can come in and look better than that? So I don't know if it was not maybe because he's not been in the last couple of years applying himself, or he just doesn't have the coaches who know how to pick these guys out of high school. But I don't think it's just him losing the desire or losing the ability to coach or losing, I don't know, whatever, since 2016. I just thought, I don't know, he just had to put together a good coaching staff. And maybe you're right. Maybe the best way for him to do it is just to resign some way and say, I'm going back to the NFL, or I'm going to take a year off and go back to the NFL, and maybe make his buyout. And this year, the finances are so tough, maybe say, okay, my buyout will be done in increments, and I'll have to take the whole thing, and just step out kind of like in a noble way like that. That would be a way to save face. I can't imagine them firing him, though. But I mean, the fans, and me included, I never thought I'd say this, but there's got to be a change, because I want to know. I don't have to see them go like just with one loss or two losses. I have to see them building and going somewhere, like I saw in 2015 and 2016. I haven't seen it since. I've just seen some really ugly games and losing games that they shouldn't lose. Then they should look better. I mean, if they lose and they looked good, that's one thing. But they don't look good, and I don't feel like they're going to look good. And I think that the Minnesota game gave false hopes, because I think that in that quarterback, when they had a blitz and Barrett knocked the ball out of the quarterback's hand, and I'm trying to remember the defensive lineman's name, but he caught the ball in the air and ran in for a touchdown.
Yep.
I think that fired up the whole team, and they ended up winning. And I think that gave false hopes to Michigan fans, and it's just back now to what it's been for 3 years now. I don't feel like it's going to change.
So the first point that you made, I got to tell you, with everything that's been talked about concerning Jim Harbaugh's decline at Michigan, I've read a zillion articles about it, thought about it myself, and that's the first time I've ever had anyone or seen anything where somebody has brought up the continuity and the chemistry on the coaching staff. So I think that's a great point. I don't know if it's correct, but I think it's a great theory, and I think it's possible. It certainly makes sense in terms of what they had going at that point and the way it's gone downhill since. Yeah, I really don't know. I think that Jim Harbaugh is a very proud man that's succeeded wherever he's gone. And he's hit a wall there, and he's extremely frustrated. And this season is totally different. If we can make something out of these 4 games, and I think we can. It's 4 games. This has gone to another level. Before it was go 9-3, get blown out by Ohio State, lose to another elite team, not be really competitive in those games, but beat everybody you're supposed to beat, completely run through Indiana and Maryland, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of where they hit that wall, hit that ceiling. You can look at it both ways. But now they're awful. They're bad. I looked at, after I watched the Indiana game, I thought, okay, let's go through every positional unit and who played well here. Well, I thought the wide receivers played pretty well. And other than that, that was about it. Milton was okay. A lot of it was not his fault, but the running game was atrocious. Of course, they've got 4 capable running backs, and 2 of them were very successful last year, Haskins and Charbonnet, but they've replaced 4 offensive linemen, and now even Mayfield, who came back, is out. So the running game's abysmal. We know what the secondary is. It's become so well known that the secondary is just getting burned. And the defensive line that's supposed to be great. Of course, Aiden Hutchinson's out for the season, at least out for this game, I know. I can't point to a positional unit that's playing well right now, again, except I gave up at 28-0. So I couldn't really evaluate the wide receivers tonight, but yeah, they're in a bad place right now, just in regards to the perception of, where's this thing headed now that they're playing this poorly. Right, sir?
Well, as a Michigan fan, I'm not optimistic about the future after these past 3 years of ugly losses. I don't want to go through another year of that.
Yeah, well, I got to say, based on these 4 games this year, it looks like things are getting worse rather than better. All right, sir. Anything else?
I don't have anything else to say. Just thank you for taking the call.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. We appreciate you being here. We've been on the line for about, 2.5 hours. So thank you so much for showing up. I think we tapped out around 150 on the line, something in that range. We got 147 right now. So want to remind everyone that I will have the top 25 that actually makes sense coming out sometime tomorrow. And we will just go full throttle here covering college football. So all the angles I can come up with from the weekend, and looking forward to next week's games. We'll preview as much as we possibly can. I've got a ton of announcements to make concerning all sorts of other ventures on other channels we're building out, podcasts, audio podcasts, all sorts of stuff. So I will not get into that right now. The brain is not necessarily functioning that well as we stand. Cheryl, thank you so much for moderating. Thank you. Appreciate that. Everybody else, thank you for your contributions. Catch the vision, understand the situation we're in, what we need to do to build the channel. Thank you so much. Like, comment, share the videos, all that good stuff. And contribute any way you can. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Patreon's a great stop. I'm telling you, 15 cents a day. You get my predictions. That's not why you do it. That's just a bonus. That's just something to be fun to look at. My predictions are there, though. You get an exclusive live stream every week per request, and you get watch parties, and you get our lock of the week from Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. And that's just a viable way that I need to build out. I need that Patreon to explode. And I need sponsors. If you want to sponsor a show, if you're a Clemson fan, you want to see a Clemson show. If you're a Kansas State fan, you want to see a Kansas State show, whatever it is, find a sponsor. That would be phenomenal. Yes, David, I do need some sleep. I do need some sleep. So I will not be working on my top 25 that actually makes sense tonight. And for as much as I would like to sit and watch this Washington-Oregon State game so I can be fully schooled and educated on Washington and Oregon State for discussions later, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through. The stomach and the head right now are not cooperating with me staying up any longer. So thank you so much, everybody. I don't know what really that means there, Jeff, but that means I was done with ESPN about a month ago. So Jeff, appreciate it. Everybody else, we will see you soon. I'll be back here Sunday night, tomorrow night, midnight. And enjoy the Cal UCLA game tomorrow. Yes. See you next time.